This isn't Summoning Insight. It isn't Thorin's Thoughts. None of those things. It's a new show called Incoming Aggression. And it's me, Thorin. You may know me from other things. If you don't, I don't know why you'd be here right now. So we'll just take that as the opening premise. But I'm doing this show with Froskurinn. Now, you may know her from her insights on Leona, the EU meta. She knows some things about China. That's what this show's about. Okay, so this show, the reason it's called Incoming Aggression, the famous thing at China is about non-stop aggression, and it's incoming because it's going to be like a preview show. So we're going to preview the week's key LPL games, the key ones you want to watch. We're not going to go into appalling detail on every game, but we're going to give you like the insight of like some expert insight, layer it with some narrative, and things you'll know will tie into things that are going to come up now. And the concept is, it won't just be preview. We'll tie into things that have happened before, but the narrative will be to do the preview of the matches coming up. So we're just going to start it pretty free form. Let's start out here, okay? So one of the games that on paper to someone in the West, they might think, okay, this game won't be anything at all, which is EDG plays Energy Pacemaker. Now, I bet most people in the West couldn't even name someone who plays for Energy Pacemaker unless they've watched at least a decent amount of LPL, because even if you watched it, the names aren't particularly like memorable. They don't particularly have like a great player or anything. Now, let's just talk about EDG's side of it, first of all. EDG's leading the league. They've lost one set. They've won all the other sets. Is EDG the best team in China right now, Froskurinn?
I am of the opinion that EDG is the best team in China right now, yes.
What makes them the best?
Pretty much their playstyle, which it's funny because this show is called Incoming Aggression off of the whole premise of like typical Chinese aggression. Yeah, you named it. Which EDG, they do have an aggressive style, like it's very much skirmish, almost Samsung White-esque, which makes sense because they have Samsung White's mid laner, Pawn. But what makes them the best is actually not their ability to team fight anymore or anything like that. They've actually kind of lost that identity a little bit as they picked up these new Korean acquisitions. It's their ability to siege and to play compositions that are so not Chinese, in a sense, that have kind of made them stand out in the region.
Okay, now when you say that, people who saw EDG at Worlds and know maybe a little bit about the team when they had NaMei, and they know that, okay, they got Deft. Now, when that move was first announced, it actually sounded like, okay, if you're going to get a Korean, maybe that makes sense. You could plug in Deft pretty much to what NaMei does, play the same style, but you're saying like they don't play that style. They've gone more the Samsung White style than the Samsung Blue EDG approach from before, right?
So the idea is that, I mean, you pretty much kind of emphasize that EDG was like Samsung Blue. We called them like Baby Blue. They would... don't lose lane, don't lose Baron. Like that was pretty much their idea about the game. And so they would kind of sit very passive. ClearLove isn't a ganking style jungler. In fact, ClearLove got a really bad rep on the international stage. People don't think he's a good jungler at all. In China, he's actually very, very popular. But they would just kind of like play passive, 45 minutes, they would suddenly come out 10k gold down like what Samsung Blue used to do, and they just suddenly win these team fights off of amazing compositions, amazing coordination, and things like that. And NaMei was a big key part of that. And of course, like Samsung Blue, Deft is a big key part of that. Obviously, they didn't have Dade, they had you, but as they transitioned over into grabbing Pawn and Deft, you would think that it would go across, it would be almost the same thing on how they would use Deft, but they actually use Deft very different than how they use NaMei. NaMei is much more self-sufficient. Like there was never an instance where ClearLove would have to babysit bottom lane. FCZF and NaMei would kind of do their own thing. They weren't really big on deporting themselves, so they would kind of play a little bit passive. And NaMei was never really known, at least as far as when he was on EDG. Obviously on Positive Energy, he was a different type of animal. He was never known as being a super aggressive person in lane. He could play these hyper late game scaling carries and just kind of wait for EDG to come get him, and then they would all do something together as five. With Deft on the team, Deft needs so much more babysitting, and it's not that Deft's weaker than NaMei or anything like that. What I'm trying to say is it's just like he needs ClearLove to come down into his lane and to kind of hold his hand, and there's much more attention bottom focus from EDG now when they pick up pretty much a guy who would say you could just like plug and play. Like this is exactly the same as NaMei. It's a team fighting AD carry. They play very similar champion pools. They have kind of a similar style. This should be like no difference. But it actually made like a big impact on EDG's kind of MO and identity as a team.
So when you reference ClearLove there, now if you ever bring up ClearLove to MonteCristo, you see like sort of the hairs raised on his neck. He gets into like an attack formation because he essentially he won't accept that ClearLove actually is a jungler. Like he does. Apparently they just play like there's a fifth lane where you kill a lot of jungle minions and then you come in and you're a team fight. Okay, but I remember this game at Worlds where ClearLove played Evelyn. and he just went completely ham, janking everywhere all over the map. So if they're playing a Samsung White style now, has he fully embraced like ganking pressure style jungling? Is there still a bit of the old Meteos farm up and then get to a team fight scenario?
I'm really glad that you brought up Meteos, because I think that there are a lot of parallels that go over there. Like ClearLove, he's almost like the better Meteos, and a lot of like Western fans.
Oh boy. Okay, keep going.
Digging this grave. He farms himself up really well, and he does have pressure at like the perfect points now. Like past EDG, that wasn't always the case. It'd kind of be like, is ClearLove going to show up? Is he not going to show up? What's he doing right now? Why are you going there? Sightstone on Jarvan. What are you doing? Now he does kind of gank a little bit, and I think it kind of goes with the difference between Pawn style and Use style. Pawn isn't very good at 5v5s. There was kind of a couple of weeks ago in the beginning of the split where they were trying to 5v5 and almost doing what old school EDG did, and it wasn't quite working as well, and so they just kind of like fine-tuned a couple of things, and now it's no longer a 5v5 team. It's like a 3v3, 4v4, 2v3, and it's ClearLove and Pawn that will kind of like, you'll think, oh, Pawn's caught, but all of a sudden ClearLove will come out of nowhere and they'll just like turn a fight. It'll be like a 2v3 and Pawn will walk away with like a triple kill, or ClearLove will get the triple kill or something like that. So I guess you can kind of say he's ganking, but I still wouldn't consider him like a jungle in terms of like controlling pressure and feeding lanes and invading jungle and creating like map awareness through vision or anything like that. It's more still just like this roam skirmish style.
If we look at EDG as a whole and the fact they're top of the standings, you're mentioning here like how they've integrated Pawn and Deft, and you haven't said anything particularly critical aside from Pawn can't particularly team fight, but they don't use that style anyway. Is it an obvious corollary of the fact that they're top of the league that they're the team who overall either their Koreans are working the best or they've integrated their Koreans the best? Is one of these the case, do you think?
I would definitely say that they've used their Korean acquisitions the best. There are very clear growing pains with kind of the we'll call them the top 8 teams, because obviously that's what playoffs is going to matter. It's going to be the top 8. Teams like Invictus Gaming, like Vici Gaming, they have amazing Koreans. You have like Dade, Mata, Rookie, and KaKAO, and yet they're just not being used as effectively. So I definitely think that there's a case to be made for EDG implementing their Koreans well.
Okay, so as far as I can tell, EDG only play once this week, right? They just played this first game? This is Energy Pacemaker? Let me see. Okay, now Energy Pacemaker, actually, didn't they have like a weird win early on in the season that like didn't even make sense?
I would have to go back and check. I haven't been looking close.
But they're low in the score. So this, just give people the skinny on this one. This should be a stomp, right?
Yeah, this should be a stomp.
Is there any player on their team that's very good at that can match up in terms of a lane or a matchup? No?
There's none.
Okay.
Energy Pacemaker, their identity used to be around their jungler, Captain 57, and his coordination with their top laner, Amazing Jay, who was previously of the LPL. They decided, like, hey, let's take the best player on our shit team and let's replace him with an even shittier player named Drizzle. And that's the story of Energy Pacemaker. Okay,
so next up, I want to talk about a team who are terrible, a team called Master 3. Because Master 3 are playing 3 games as far as I can tell here. And they're playing against IG, they're playing against Vici, and they're playing against Energy Pacemaker. So ignore the Energy Pacemaker one we've just said, they're both quite bad teams. But that means essentially that M3 is going to play against Invictus Gaming, aka KaKAO, and Vici, aka Dandy. So maybe we should start. What is the jungler position like for M3?
It's Ruo. And it's the irony here, and this is the narrative that I love about Masters 3. Masters 3 is named so because there's 3 owners of kind of the World Elite franchise. And when Masters 3 was originally World Elite Academy, and obviously the rule changed where you can't have an organization own 2 LPL teams. So there's World Elite, and then there's Masters 3, formerly a World Elite Academy. And Masters 3 is coached by the former jungler of World Elite, Axine, who now coaches the jungler before him, the guy who he replaced on...
so a Korean guy, yeah? The guy who used to play in... what team did he used to play in Korea? I think he used to play in AHQ Korea or something?
Some bottom...
Okay, but he's a Korean guy. Like, now, he has Koreans in his team, right? He has Dade. Who else do they have? Looper. Now, those 2 aren't doing too well, right?
Yeah. Okay. my obviously I'm not MonteCristo. I don't have like a huge background in Korean League of Legends. I try to watch the important games, so I kind of understood like at Dade at his height, like watching the OGN finals and things like that, and kind of seeing that. But I don't have a big history with Dade. I don't know him in and out. So
what have you seen so far, though?
He's a shit player. Like, and obviously I can't make that statement because it's Dade. He has this huge reputation that precedes him. It's the same thing with Looper.
What's his problem then?
Doesn't care. But that's what people keep telling me. They tell me he doesn't care, and I have no doubt that he doesn't care. Like, it's nicknamed Dade's retirement home. But if I had no idea Dade's history going into this, and I was just a brand new spectator to League of Legends watching Dade, I'd be like, what is this? How much did they pay for this guy? Like, why would you spend ridiculous amounts of money getting him in the mid lane? He constantly counterpicks himself, doesn't do pretty much anything in the team fight phase.
I mean, that's what he's most famous for, a team fight, like, playmaker. Does he ever turn it on? Has he done it at all this season?
I think there's been maybe, like, you can count on one hand the number of plays where it's like, oh, there's Dade, and then it just suddenly disappears again. And it really hasn't made any difference to change impact of games at all.
Okay, so when they play against Invictus Gaming, now we don't know who will definitely be played, but in theory, Invictus Gaming might play Rookie as their mid laner. Obviously, the guy who actually played against Dade in the final of OGN Summer and KT Arrow's mid laner. Would Rookie be a considerable favourite against Dade?
I think Invictus Gaming would be a considerable favorite against Masters 3. It's funny because we've already kind of had like these hyped up matchups where it's like, if this was back in Korea, like this is Dade versus Rookie, we've had Dandy versus inSec, but in China, it's like the stage is completely set different. And you're just like, oh, it's Masters 3 versus Invictus Gaming. I guess this will tell us who's like the shittier team or who's going to be on the bottom side of the brackets. And I mean, you can blame it on kind of I don't even want to blame it on kind of the no-name Chinese. And what I mean by no-name is Candy and Love CD, M3's bottom lane, kind of like holding M3 down. Because I definitely think like Dade is very much to blame for M3's lack of success. It doesn't help that he has a very weak bottom lane, even by just bottom tier LPL standings. But
so the big X factor whenever you look at IG is always like, which combo will they play of their Koreans? Because they've got three. They've got Save the top laner, Jungler KaKAO, and Rookie the mid laner. And people always assume it's always going to be the jungle mid lane because of the synergy coming over from KTA. Does it matter in terms of which they play, whether they'll beat M3 here? Like, if they play Save, does it make it less likely they'll win there? If they have the Chinese mid laner there, does it matter?
I don't think so. In all honesty, I think that's kind of a blow more so to Looper than it is to Dade, just because Pokemon is not near the caliber of Save. He's actually a pretty lackluster, mediocre top laner for Invictus when they decide to play Rookie in the mid lane, because obviously the other combination, like you said, is Zatai and Save. So it's interesting, though. The one thing that's kind of unique about Invictus Gaming is that they've been starting to ramp up a little bit. They came out in the beginning of the split and they were facing like these low bottom tier teams and just kind of smashing through them. Rookie was playing like Fizz and he'd go and he'd dive Nexus towers, and it was kind of classic IG in that if you're a fan of Invictus, they're always kind of like I think Moscow 5 used to have the tagline "See Hero, Kill Hero," and that was kind of what Invictus Gaming would do. There was like no strategy. It was just like, hey, we can just stand in bushes and we can wait for someone to appear on a map and we can go chase them down and kill them repeatedly. And that's kind of what they did. And then as they started facing not even top teams, but just kind of mid-tier LPL teams, suddenly like the Rookie KaKAO hype train just came to a derail and just hit a brick wall. It just stopped. They then had a short stint where they put in Save and Zatai. Pretty shitty success, although Save and Zatai actually got the match that was against the toughest player that they're going to face so far. So I'm still like, I'm a Zatai fan, so obviously I can't like really put like Rookie, like weigh that without bias. But we'll see if they do Rookie KaKAO or Save and Zatai. I don't think it really matters. It should be like a 2-0 stomp to IG. It should be because they're ramping up, they're getting better, but it's IG, so they could decide to take like a nosedive at any time. Okay,
but overall in terms of IG, How is IG fourth at the moment overall?
They've had a front-loaded easy schedule, to be frank. They faced bottom-tier teams. And this is the thing, like the standings, it's really hard if you're not like really familiar with the LPL and the system to kind of like look at the standings and understand where the top teams are. Because if you ask like anyone who watches a lot of Chinese League of Legends, they're always going to say it's EDG, OMG, LGD, and those are the top teams in the standing. And if you actually look at the standings, I believe it's EDG, Snake, OMG, IG. And then I think, does IG come in over LGD? Okay,
well, they're tied in terms of record, but yeah.
And it's so like mismatched. But if you talk to anyone, they're like, "Oh, LGD is the better team over IG." But and the thing is there are so many games, and like the system, the point system. I actually really like the point system because I think it gives power to when you have a league this big, like you've got 12 fucking teams. When you have a league this big, it gives power to the bottom tier teams to affect the standings of the top tier teams. Like what was it? Last year we had a game determined what team went into the playoffs by the last place seed. A Positive Energy got to
that was
determine,
World Elite or something, right?
Yeah, they got to determine who snuck into the playoffs. So it was it's pretty good.
Okay. Well, in that case, if IG, but the way you're describing it so far, maybe their standing is a bit favourable right now. They wouldn't necessarily be at that sort of echelon. Saying that, like, okay, they're going to play M3 now. We're expecting them to beat them then. But the same week, they're going to play against Starhorn Royal Club, who are actually 2 spots below them. Now, what about Starhorn Royal Club? How would they match up against them?
I actually really like Starhorn, and this is going to be another like kind of controversial statement. I think Starhorn is stronger without Uzi than with Uzi. And the reason why I say that, I'm not the only person who thinks this. Like, I'll add some credentials to this statement. Aaron, the coach for EDG, recently released an interview where he kind of talks about every LPL team except for Invictus Gaming, which is pretty humorous. But he talks about how with Starhorn losing Uzi, they pretty much lose their most limiting factor on strategy. Because you have to think with Uzi, they only had one goal, and it was protect the AD carry, raise the puppy. And now without him, they've been able to branch out and play all these different styles of composition and kind of different paces of games. Because if you want to talk about typical Chinese aggression, that was Starhorn Royal Club. And a lot of that was using inSec as kind of the catalyst for these crazy engages where suddenly he'd just be on top of you, and then Uzi would go nuts into the back line playing Vayne or something like that. But without him, and now they have a sub. They actually started with a guy named HYY, which was a solo queue mid lane sub. And now they have an actual AD carry sub named Wei. And he had a good showing on a Kalista the first game, but he's still pretty lackluster. NaMei, of course, is waiting in the wings for that team. I think Starhorn Royal Club's the better team, even without the sub, just because of how they've started to change their style. And I credit this a lot to their coaches, actually. Everyone likes to talk about how Uzi is the first player ever to go to 2 world finals, but his coach, Chris, is actually the only coach in League of Legends to get a team to 2 world finals.
If you're going to talk about Starhorn Royal Club, and like you mentioned here, at the moment they have like they've just been rotating who the AD carries, and they're waiting for NaMei to come in. Mm-hmm. Do you expect big things if he arrives?
Yes, I know that they're scrimming with NaMei, so there shouldn't be any sort of there's no excuse of if NaMei gets like his premiere game where he finally gets to play with the team, which is suspected to be in March. If he falters, there's no excuse. They're supposedly using him in scrims, trying to work out the synergy. Him and Zero have been doing, so it should be good to go. And NaMei, what I love about NaMei, and again, this is kind of what we were talking about when I referenced Deft before, is NaMei's not just this team fight AD carry. Like, people will look at him on like the global stage and say, oh yeah, a really lackluster showing. They'll look at him in EDG and they'll say, oh, he's just team fighting. He's exactly like Deft. You could just plug and play. But when you look at his time on Positive Energy, he had very much an Uzi kind of style of play. He was that super aggressive, very flashy AD carry. So the fact that NaMei has not only shown domestic dominance on 2 different teams to like kind of put himself as the #1 AD carry, at least for me in the region and through standings, but he showed a wealth of different play styles and different positions that he can fill for his team, which I think is incredibly powerful to a team like Starhorn Royal Club, who are trying to re-identify and remold themselves.
So if they're trying to re-identify themselves, one of the problems which they apparently bridged for Worlds was, how do you have Uzi and inSec in the same team? Now, if they're now trying to branch out and try different strategies, and we even heard some of this, that was the reason why there was the drama before Worlds, and maybe Uzi won't go. In the current lineup of how they've been using those other AD carries, has inSec's role changed at all? Has his approach changed? Will it have to change again when NaMei comes in?
So Uzi was the primary shot caller for Starhorn Royal Club, and inSec was the secondary shot caller. I don't have 100% confirmation who their primary shot caller is now, but I would assume that inSec is still taking a shot calling role, if not the primary position. And it's funny because when you watch Starhorn's recent games, their shot calling is passive and very cautious, almost to a fault, which you're sitting there thinking like, this is inSec, this is the guy that goes like super ham, super deep, he finally found the perfect place for him, it's like he was Chinese all along. And suddenly it's like this really I don't want to say methodical, because you could definitely play it more efficiently than Starhan has, but very, very cautious. And so as far as inSec's role changing, I mean, he's found success on Jarvan, a champion that before domestically he had 0% win rate on, and he's known as like a big like Lee Sin, of course, and like Rengar, Kha'Zix, like these hyper carry junglers, and now he's starting to play more to the meta of like this supportive style. Like he'll still pull out Rengar and Lee Sin and do his inSec thing, but we have started to see some diversity from him, and I think NaMei will just free up inSec. Like if Starhorn and their support staff decide that they want to go back to their hyper aggressive jungle carry play style, NaMei is more than able to fit into that role, or he should be kind of given his like historic ability to adapt and to change. But if they want to go for a split push or siege comp, or they want to give more power to Khorne and Kola, which Kola has actually been doing fantastic, they have that option there. So it's all just kind of big question marks. I think that they have all of the tools to be a top tier team, and I think they're definitely the dark horse kind of coming into the LPL.
When Starhorn Royal Club plays Invictus Gaming, and on paper you've got those superstar matchup, jungle matchup there. You've got inSec versus KaKAO, players who've not only at one time been the best Korean jungler, but they actually played on the same team even. Does the matchup actually live up to the hype right now, just in terms of those players? What do you think?
I want to say yes, because I want to sell that narrative and I would love to see it. But frankly, when Dade and inSec met again, like they recently just played, like it should have been this amazing narrative. Last time Dade and Mata faced inSec, they systematically destroyed him in the World Championship, and it wasn't. These are, I think China's almost like a microcosm for actually realizing that the Koreans themselves, like the individual players, are incredibly talented, but they're not head and shoulders above. And it's funny because I'm talking about like two different Korean players and comparing them as opposed to like a Chinese and a Korean player, but they're not head and shoulders above their competition, if that makes sense. It's like if you need more than 3 Koreans to be that super dominant Korean elite team. You can't just take these elite players and plug them in and expect instant success. Although, again, these hybrid rosters are taking time to smooth out their communication, and they are ramping up considerably fast. But unfortunately, I don't think the KaKAO inSec dynamic has as much.
It's not the same as if it was in OGN.
Yeah, it's cool to think about it, and it'll be interesting to see if inSec like invades KaKAO over and over again, or if KaKAO invades inSec over and over again. If they get like the 1v1 duel, obviously that would be really cool, but unfortunately I think there's too many factors, there's too many variables in the side lanes that can really sway that.
If I gave you 3 factors you have to pick one that would explain the scenario you're setting up here, where you have these players who in their old teams maybe were gods even, but they're not quite that level above everyone who's not Korean, basically, when they go to China. Which of these 3 factors would you put your money on? Is it, like you were saying there, you need like more than 3? Like once you have a certain amount, it's like they have like a Zerg, like a hive mind mentality where they just telepathically communicate in Korean and they know what to do? Is it that like the coaches have some kind of special imprint on how the teams play there in Korea? Or third option, is it that unfortunately playing with either Chinese players or players who just don't have as good communication with you kind of degrades your individual level? Which of the 3 do you think is the most likely culprit for this?
I would probably say it's the third one, but it definitely the cheating answer is a combination of all 3. I know that the Koreans were imported not just due to their talent, because obviously this is like S tier talent coming in, like you want these players, but because of their ability to, in China they call it self-coach. So just their ability to, on their own, be internal and reflective on their own play and adjust, and kind of setting up and trying to present these Koreans to the Chinese teams like, this is how we want you to behave. This is how you should act. This is how you should grow.
So in that particular matchup, it sounds like you're saying you expect Starhorn Royal Club to beat IG.
Yes. I mean, Starhorn Royal Club has had longer with their Korean players. They've integrated far better to the scene. And it's funny, though, because like both these teams, I was a big fan of IG getting their Korean acquisitions because I didn't think it changed the identity of Invictus Gaming. The fact that they took like KT arrows and like Invictus Gaming and smashed them into one, I was like, this is going to be awesome. There's going to be people dying all over the place. It's not awesome.
Right, to wrap up the IG section, okay, the last game they play is against King, who are not a particularly relevant team. IG should beat King, right?
No.
No? Why not?
Oh my goodness, you set me up. I saw the softball, Thorin. Okay, King. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this. I have been a huge advocate for King. I said in the beginning that I really liked King, that they're going to be a top-tier team, and to be frank,
what are they waiting for?
They were waiting to figure out if they could figure out the meta or not, which was bizarre because if you follow the history of King, they were a team that was actually really unique in adapting to the meta quickly and kind of figuring out what picks are going to be strong and then kind of changing their play style. Well, not overhauling where their power points are weighted in their lanes, but kind of changing up like their champion picks to fit the meta and steamrolling through people. They have a very matured sense of vision control, which is actually really fun to watch, especially in the Chinese region. They struggle post 35 minutes because obviously they're coming from LSPL, and they were so dominant in LSPL that games just wouldn't go longer than 35 minutes. They would just snowball and wreck people. So obviously against these veteran teams that know kind of how to slow down the pace of the game and stop the bleeding, King they flail a little bit in the mid lane because they're like, oh god, I've never been in this situation, where do I go? Learning on the fly. But they just kind of had this middle week, like week 2 and week 3 were just really rough for them. They just kind of stalled out. They were dropping games that they shouldn't have. They continuously were picking not off meta, but they would go to Maokai. Like, who is still playing Maokai when Gnar is on like this hyper run through LPL, and same things with Kassadin. So I attribute a lot of it to the fault of their top laner, Skye, which is actually one of their standout members. But they finally got their shit together last week, and they 2-0'd LGD. And it wasn't like LGD was trolling. Like, there's instances where GAMT and OMG like split 1-1, but this wasn't one of those issues. You could see that LGD was getting pretty frustrated. Like, it showed on their faces and kind of the compositions that they went for, the fact that they decided to use Acorn back-to-back in the 2 matches, although that should have been pre-set up, because if they chose to sub in Flame on the what's what I'm looking for, like first, just like as a last-minute sub, they would have been penalized bans. So the fact that they weren't penalized bans tells me that they went and they said, we're going to play Acorn 2 times for this match for sure. So that was planned ahead of time. But King finally got it together. I think they're still a top-tier team. I don't think that they're going to overthrow LGD or EDG or OMG, despite the fact that
they're going to beat IG now, though.
Yeah, but they should beat the shit out of IG.
Okay. But explain this to me. Elucidate me. How can this team, who, as far as I know, is made up of Chinese members, remember? They didn't recruit some amazing Korean players. Apparently, you're telling me they have good vision control, but again, they have Chinese players here, and I'm well informed that there's no such thing as a Chinese support or jungler. So where's this vision control come from?
It comes from their Chinese support and their jungler. Their jungler's name is MLXG. He changed it. It was formerly Lonely, and their support's name is Lei. I would probably give most of it to Lei. I think he's...
Are they anomalies within the Chinese scene in this sense? Are they particularly good in this area, above and beyond the others?
I would say the new wave of like talent coming in from not even the Korean scene, but from the Chinese scene, no. I think that they are kind of like a standout, though. Like they're higher, but the vision control in China has definitely stepped up. You can no longer say, like, look at a Chinese game and say, oh, they don't know how to ward. Their vision is poor. Like that's false now.
Was that already like on its way anyway? What is that to do with the Korean influx? What do you think? Or Korean coaching? You know.
I think you can go back to the KT Arrows versus Samsung Blue game, actually, because the vision in that game was, I don't know about unique, but you can definitely tell that the Chinese were watching the OGN finals, because directly following that game, you had a bunch of really important Chinese games. I think they were coming on to their playoffs, and EDG particularly, their warding was pretty much... you could pick it up from the OGN finals and place in that game. You could tell that these unique Baron wards were appearing, like the Baron Gate ward, and you could tell that they were studying it, and that was kind of when it started to infiltrate the scene a little bit. And then from there, the other teams just leveled up. Of course, you have the influx of Korean supports coming in like Zero and Korean junglers coming in, although I don't actually think like inSec and KaKAO have really revolutionized warding. Maybe Dandy and Mata, but I think it started before the big Korean migration after the OGN finals.
Okay, so you've set the sights pretty high for this King team here, even if their standings it's not very good. But here's the other problem for Froskurinn. They're not just playing Star and Royal Club, they're playing OMG. Now, there's some people who think that OMG, some people think they're the best team now. Some people think they're going to be the best team. How can King actually match up against OMG? Is it even doable?
They shouldn't be able to. But OMG, I hate OMG right now. So I was one of the big patrons that when we did the rankings for them, I was like, OMG is going to be the #1 team. There's no way they shouldn't be. This is a perfect roster. You know, they've got Uzi now, but this was under the assumption that they would have Cloud, which they still don't have Cloud. They have a different guy.
Okay.
Not my favorite. OMG, though, it is so blatantly obvious that they're trolling through their games that it's just...
When you say that, is that in the sense that they just know they're going to win a whole bunch of them anyway, and it's not they have to try? They're not just like, they don't give a fuck about winning, right?
I mean, I guess you can make the case that they know that they're going to win, but they probably definitely care about winning. Like, a team is going to not want to drop games to Gamzee, but you can tell that they don't care enough to try their hardest. They're not... OMG, context for the team. OMG was an incredibly creative team. Like, they were known for revolutionize how team fights were played, how compositions were created, kind of pushing the meta, pushing the envelope, being that driving force of change in China. Like, they were the premier team. And then they subbed out Cool when he got his injury. They put in Xiang, and that kind of went stagnant because Xiang was so one-dimensional his playstyle, but it was okay because that was during the 4VO meta, so Xiang kind of went uncovered until he went to All-Stars. Fast forward, now we have like this superstar roster. It's like, okay, this is gonna be perfect. They've got Uzi, they replaced Sand, they're ready to rock and roll. They don't do anything. They sit in lane phase. It's no longer, because OMG was like this skirmish style team where LoveLing would gank top for going all the time. He'd gank for mid and Cool, and you'd have like these three amazing like bash bros, and they'd roam the map together, and then they'd go and pick up their bot lane and have like these crazy team fights. That doesn't happen anymore. In fact, Going gets camped really hard in his game, just ganked repeatedly and puts him in the ground. And there's actually a lot of feedback from the Chinese fans where they're calling Going shit. And like, again, if you don't watch LPL, like to Western fans, because they saw Going on the international stage, like, this guy's a god, he's amazing, how did we not know about this guy? And now in China, like right now, the cool thing to do is just to shit on Going. Oh, he's such a shitter, what is he doing? Like, this guy sucks now. And it's because OMG's like identity as a team, like that's kind of the big key thing for LPL is identity. Who are teams now? Where have they come and where do they go forward? And their identity as a team is to sit in lane and to beat their opponents in CS and then somehow get free towers. It's not through superior vision. It's not through superior rotations. They just mechanically brute force games. And they don't crush teams. Like sometimes there have been just absolute stomps, but for the majority, they just kind of like don't care. They just ease into it. And so it's frustrating because you know, or you want to believe that there's this second gear of OMG, that they're going to turn it on and they're going to be that super team. And you see sometimes flashes of it like in their snake set. But for the most part, they don't show any sort of unique strategy. In fact, they show that their vision has gone incredibly lackluster. Their team fighting is very poor, and their map movements and where they had their pressure points previously has completely changed. Now we have LoveLing ganking Uzi's lane far more than Going's lane, which never happened before. OMG historically never paid attention to their bottom lane, so I don't know if that's Uzi's fault, if that's a coaching fault. I know that they recently got a new coach, but team just does not look impressive. But you can't count them out because they just beat opponents because they have 30 CS on someone, which shouldn't happen at the professional level. You should never beat an opponent because you have like 30 to 60 CS leads in every single lane.
Well, that'd never happen in the West. TSM Alliance. No, but I actually have a serious question here. So I'm always wary whenever you have a team setup where a narrative is like, it's a sexy narrative, like everyone wants to get on board inside. So the obvious narrative with OMG is like, oh, they'll be like a triple threat team and they have the best player at every position except apparently at support, but still 4 out of the 5 and they could just dominate the whole region. Then who knows, if you get too excited off the fumes, they're going to win worlds as well, they're going to beat the Koreans, oh my god, it's all going to work. But going the other way, my natural impulse with what's happened so far, where they've been good but they haven't been like unbeatable world dominators, like there's nothing wrong with them, is to go the other way. I want to be wary of the other side, where I want to believe that like maybe there's a bit of hubris here. Maybe in terms of having a system, it actually doesn't make sense to have a pure triple threat lineup, because you're going to have to essentially sacrifice one of the stars. They can't really be a star. Like one lane can't have jungle pressure all the time. One lane can't have all the side lane farm. So Have they actually at the moment started to make inroads into kind of like deciding what the system is? Are they still waiting for that? Is this like a game of chicken to decide which star will bow and become like secondary to whoever it might be?
They've had two different type of kind of emerging styles, which I think fits well to this. They've had the Uzi plays Severe, and they send him up into the top lane, they do a lane swap, and he is just a split push bot. Like, literally, you never see this guy. Like, most teams, they send up Severe because they want to get the early 6 and then use that ultimate in team fights around Dragon and just kind of snowball off that way. No, they send this guy up there for like 20 minutes. He has like above and beyond perfect CS, and then you'll occasionally see him at the bottom of the game. He'll be like, oh, hi, right, I'm that amazing AD carry that's playing a utility farm champion right now. It's like PvE. Or they put him on Vayne, and they gank his lane over and over, and then Going gets wrecked by a guy named Let Me from GT and a guy named Danger, like this bottom tier LPL team, because he's used to, when he gets ganked, to have LoveLing there to counter gank for him, and it's just not happening right now. And they've found success in kind of both different styles, but not dominating success. I think it's worked a little bit more to have Uzi go that utility route, but I kind of feel like between their sets, like they'll sometimes come out the first set and they'll put him on Severe, and then the second set they'll be like, fuck it, just give him Vayne, I don't want to listen to him anymore. So it's kind of weird. Okay,
so your sense is that that's like a bit of, okay, so maybe the Severe game is Uzi like, okay, maybe I have to give something to the team, I have to do what they want, but then they kind of like, okay, here's your reward, like fan service time, now we'll put Uzi on Vayne, and then we just like gank his lane constantly, like, you know, give the fans what they want, and he's going to carry the whole game.
Yeah, pretty much. They'll like pick Jarvan with it at least, so he'll get like the synergy with the Cataclysm.
If you had to pick which one they should go with, like if they had to pick one, I mean, it's nice to be able to switch between the two, obviously. If they had to pick one as like, this is the only way we'll go, which would you choose?
I would choose to give it to Going, simply because of the state of the game right now and how important Severe is to the meta, and having like a utility AD carry style versus like a hyper scaling. Which, I mean, there is room for, you can play like Jinx and Callista and Tristana maybe with her rework coming back out, but Severe is just far too important. Okay, so OMG is going to beat King. We've got this, unless... well, based on all that we know at the moment, we have to say they are okay, because we don't have any reason yet. We'll have to know next week what they fucked up and what they did wrong to know why they wouldn't. Okay, so in that sense, we have to say they're going to beat King, right? I will say yes, but I think King has all of the tools to cause serious problems for OMG, because right now their warding is non-existent, and that's the one thing that King is actually really good at.
Okay, but there's another game OMG plays this week. They play against LGD. Now, obviously in the standings, OMG's above LGD. Is the actual matchup of the teams, how close is that?
I don't know, actually. Like, this is, and of course this is going to happen on Valentine's Day.
Is that relevant? Do people have to play like Heartseeker Ash and stuff? Like, what's the relevance of that for Froskurinn?
I was going to go and like do fun things for Valentine's Day, but I was like, damn, I need to find out who's the better team, OMG or LGD, so now I have to stay inside. It's actually really hard, and I don't know who LGD is going to be playing. Like, they've been playing Acorn more because they think that the team is stronger with Acorn. He's had more time with them. Rumble, of course, is in the meta. Acorn's naturally a Rumble player. They're trying to put carries and Imp and Wayless, but they have someone like Flame sitting on the bench. And if I were to pick a dream matchup, I would love to see Flame versus Going. And I'm not just saying this to appease to you, Thorin. I want to see Going dismantle Flame, just like truly tear into him, just to end that once and for all. So I will say that, but I don't think they'll play Flame. I think they'll play Acorn. Okay, but that's what's interesting is the setup of the two teams is that LG themselves can have a triple threat approach, basically, because we can have Flame play top lane, you can have Imp play AD carry, but then previous LGD, Wayless was considered like one of the stars, you know. In that particular setup in LGD, is that part of the reason why it's better to have Acorn, so that you know what the system is in that sense? If they play Flame, how is Wayless adapted, do you think, to playing essentially like he becomes kind of the third star at times? He's not the same carry potential, it seems. They seem to do this really weird thing. The last time that they played Flame, I believe he got a Lissandra pick, and Wayless went Lulu, actually. Okay. And it was weird because it was kind of like a waste of Wayless's talents. And like Flame would get like he played Lissandra well. He got really good engagements for his team and things like that. And it seems like he actually wants to be involved in like the 5v5 dynamic. My understanding of Flame is that he just kind of goes off to his own lane. He just carries from there. He builds all the damage items. He doesn't really give a fuck what his team's doing underneath him. But his dynamic in LGD actually plays with the team, and he plays things like he's been put on Rumble, he's been put on Lissandra. I mean, it's not like these hyper carry top laners. I think he's had an Aurelia game, but so has Acorn. Wayless, though, when they played Flame, they did put Wayless on this supportive style, utility-based mid laner and Lulu, and it just like didn't work. It was just awful. I don't know if this speaks to the fact that it's just a wasted asset, or if Wayless just can't play this style.
So normally we're thinking if Wayless he's going to be on like Zed or something, right?
More like Ari, I would say. It's probably his
a playmaker.
Yeah. Ari, Orianna, which Orianna still kind of falls in that utility base, but it's like a playmaking farm champion. His whole thing is that he farms really, really well, which farm is really important to Chinese players and to the Chinese meta. Like, Xiao Weixiao wasn't a big name mid laner when he was in China, but he was respected for his ability to farm.
Okay.
Like, it's really important to them to have high CS, which to us, it's like, you know, if you sacrifice CS to get like 20 kills, like who the fuck cares? But it's like really important to them. And Wayless is really good at this, like manipulating minion waves, and kind of has weird itemization where he used to build jungle items and he would like push waves and he'd go and farm jungle and he'd get back in time and he'd like build up 100 CS. And so what he does is he kind of stays even in his lane unless he gets like random solo kills on Lulu against Azir, because that totally happened. But he'll stay in his lane and he'll farm it, and then he'll just out-itemize because he just has like ridiculous CS on his opponent, and then late game he just goes off. Like, there's always going to be a point in Wayless's game where suddenly he'll just get like a quadra kill or a triple kill out of nowhere.
So who do you actually pick for that matchup, OMG versus LGD? It sounds like you're leaning towards OMG.
I want to do LGD, actually.
Okay. And this is if they play Acorn or something? Is there a contingent factor there?
I don't really care if they play Acorn and Flame. I don't think that actually, I think it does rely a little bit more on Acorn, although I haven't really looked close enough at Flames. The reason what I'm putting this hinge on is OMG are struggling with vision control right now. They're struggling with wave management right now, and their kind of key to success is they just win in lane. They're just far better mechanical players. And against LGD, if you're at that high caliber of team, like pretty much EDG and LGD, you should not be able to just mechanically brute force these lanes. It just will not happen, or should not happen.
So that can even it up a bit there? They can go toe to toe the carries, essentially?
Well, yeah, it should force OMG to kind of like do something strategic. Like, they should have to rely on strategy to beat LGD, and LGD historically has been a very strategic rotation-based team from their shot caller PYL, and so now they kind of married the perfect mechanics to amazing strategy, or supposed amazing strategy. The thing that I really like about LGD, and this is where I actually prefer Acorn over Flame, although I haven't really examined Flame's wave control as well, is Acorn is so good at managing creep waves and making sure that LGD is never put in a situation where, if they approach like a dragon fight, if you look at all of LGD's waves, the waves will always be pushing. Like, always prep their waves. And this sounds like something really, really basic, but so many teams will try to approach a dragon fight and fight it with waves pushed against them. So it's almost like you have to weight the statistics. Like, if LGD loses that dragon fight, but all of their waves are pushed away from them, then the damage that the enemy team can do off of winning that fight is almost negligible, because they don't have a wave that they can go to. They can't turn that dragon fight into like a free dragon and then a free tower, because, oh shit, we gotta deal with all these creep waves pushing. Whereas enemy teams will be like, okay, we're gonna 50-50 on this dragon fight because it could go either way, and then if we lose the dragon fight because all the waves are pushed on us, we're gonna lose not only the dragon but probably 2 towers as well as the ace. And it's just like that small difference. Like, LGD, when they lose games, it's never post 45 minutes. It's always a really slow, drawn-out loss, because they're so good at making sure that you can't maximize efficiency off of their misplayed team fights. You always have to like kind of grind against it.
Okay, so riddle me this in terms of OMG. If they have all these great players in lanes, okay, and they're winning by CS, okay, the laners are doing their job. But the problem is they have a superstar jungler. They have this guy who, if I talk to some of you China Talk people who obviously breathe the rarefied air that comes over from China with whatever hallucinogenics are in there, you guys will tell me LoveLing's amazing. He's probably blasphemy like he's better than inSec, all sorts of craziness like that. If he's so good, does he not know about Sightstone? Has he heard of that? Is he using the trinket at all? Like, what's the problem here? Why doesn't he just play swords? Hey, you've won the game, right?
It's different. It's different how he's good. It's like the difference between Dandy and, I don't want to say inSec because I think LoveLing is kind of like the hybrid between them. But Dandy is amazing in his control of the jungle and his patience and what he gathers for his team and how he intelligently moves around it. And inSec is amazing, or was amazing, by his sheer aggression and his mechanics and his ability to create plays and to punish them. LoveLing, it's the true power of friendship. It's the bromance between going, LoveLing, and Cool. And LoveLing and Cool, they almost can't be talked about as a separate identity. They're the same thing.
That's deep. It's like two souls merged into one. Okay.
Exactly. Like only LoveLing is allowed to sit on Cool's bed. It's that level.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Exactly. But like that's the thing that makes LoveLing so good. He has great mechanics. He has actually really creative jungle pathing. He was the guy who popularized the Elise. Like when Elise was really, really good, and it was all about kind of invading with Elise and just like killing the enemy jungler on the across buff. He was the guy who popularized the Doran's Blade Elise start and then just walking in and killing people. And that kind of used to be his stick. He would just walk into the jungle, he'd just find your jungler, and he'd kill you. And he did that knowing that then he could gank, going, or Cool. And if the enemy jungler showed up for a counter gank, he automatically was already stronger. So if it was a 2v2 or a 3v3 or something like that, they just won. And now it's like, because he's not ganking going and he's not ganking Cool, he's almost lost that charm about him. He still has great creative use of like how he goes about team fights, specifically with his Jarvan, but it's against Twin, so it's okay, because LG has a really shitty jungler.
So we have LGD potentially winning this matchup. Now there's one more game LGD plays this week though, and they get to play against Vici Gaming. Now, here's what doesn't make sense about this particular matchup. You have a team that has triple threat, but like you said, non-existent jungler, like, there's nothing particularly to talk about the support player. Vici Gaming, in theory, are the ones that have all the supportive players. They have Dandy, they have Mata. How does this inverted matchup actually work?
Did you just sweep PYL under the rug?
I know you love him and thinks he's like Mad Life Jr. or something, but okay.
God. He is Mata. He is the Chinese Mata.
Well, he's playing against Mata, so give me the matchup then. Why is he better than Mata right now?
Okay, I think that PYL is better than Mata right now because he is more effective and he's better executed in the team. And you can make the argument that he has a better team around him, so it's almost like that Looper argument.
Okay.
Like, of course, it's easy to be the best top laner in the world when you have the goddamn best team around you, but PYL is LGD. Like, he is that team. He is... Like Mata, he's the shot caller of the team. He's the captain of the team. People like Flame, like Acorn, like Imp, like Wayless. So all of his teammates are on LGD and have said publicly, we chose to go to this team because PYL is the captain. He has this reputation that precedes him. So
he's also a very old school player. He goes way back to like 2011, this sort of era.
Yeah, he was on Noah's Ark, I believe.
In terms of this matchup now, you're actually saying outright that he's better than Mata.
Yes, right now he's...
Is he the best support in all of China?
I would
of
say so, yeah.
any nationality?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then, how do you think the matchup will go in terms of Mata playing against Imp? But hey, now Imp's got a really good support. Hey, I think I've heard this storyline before. How do you think Mata will enjoy that with the mighty Vasily?
Oh,
the rock of LMQ.
The true carry.
Yeah.
I think Imp and PYL will dumpster Vasily in Mata's lane. I think Mata will probably leave Vasily. In an ideal situation, they'll put Vasily on Tristana because that's the only champion that he statistically can play. He's had a couple of games. I think he's had one good game on Kalista and two good games on Severe. And he should probably leave Vasily to kind of free farm the lane, or maybe they'll do a lane swap and then just roam with Dandy. I think that would be like their best key of success. Because when Dandy and Mata are together, I mean, obviously they're a package deal.
Yeah.
Vici does a little bit better, but if it's just a straight 2v2, and this is the other like really scary thing though, that if Mata roams, it could probably cause PYL to roam, and PYL, when he roams, that game's over. Like, LGD just automatically wins. Shot caller of the team, obviously I'm assuming that actually Mata could be the shot caller for Vici. I actually don't know who's calling the shots for them, but obviously he can talk to 3 of the 5 players, PYL, in Chinese, although I think that they communicate in English when they're talking to everyone. So,
ignoring the fact that, okay, the it's pretty obvious the VG team, first of all, compared to LGD, doesn't have the same level of actual carry player, and secondly, definitely not the same level that Dandy and Mate are used to in their careers previously, where they've had amazing players at some of these positions. Taking all of that out of the equation, so we're not looking at who won the game, does the Dandy Mate synergy combo, does it still work very well? Is it still a premier combo?
I actually think they do work together. The problem is that they don't get to roam together a lot. Dandy either has to, actually I could say Dandy. Mate like has to babysit Vici, and Dandy has to babysit his solo lanes. And the primary issue is that Hutong and Carry, the solo lanes for Vici Gaming, are actually fairly talented, especially for how young they are and how new they are to the scene. But you're still working with like maybe, I don't know, a 7, and LGD is just working with like 10s across the board. So the fact that the two strongest like core members of Foundation to give Vici Gaming strength to beat LGD are on these supportive style roles in jungle and support, and it's more about like the vision control and influx of information. The fact that they're just supporting 8s, whereas LGD just gets automatic 10s, is pretty detrimental to their chances of victory.
Okay, in terms of that matchup, who's going to win, Vici or LGD?
LGD should win. The issue, though, is that LGD is kind of been in a rut. They've been trying to play around Kalista. And the issue with Kalista is that obviously her passive with the Soul wants to keep the support in lane. Like sometimes they'll put her up in the top lane and have her free farm to her items, because her items are very cost efficient to build if they go the Hurricane route, and she can push down towers really quickly. Pretty safe to stay in a lane because, again, her passive, she can jump back and forth. But ideally, like, you would want the support with Kalista because you're trying to use that stupid soul thing to get the extra damage. And that limits PYL. It retains him into the lane. And again, LGD thrive when PYL is able to roam and to kind of call shots and get on the map and kind of examine everything and help everyone out. And so by keeping it in the lane, like when they played it last time, they actually got 2 really early double kills. Like PYL got the first double kill and then Imp got the second double kill. And you're like, damn, Imp and PYL are fed. This is just going to be an LGD case closed victory. But they actually ended up losing that game. And I think a big part of it was because they do not understand how to use this Kalista pick, not only in the early game, but especially in the late game.
When we were talking about Imp there, the whole story of Imp's career, since the majority of people who've seen him play will have only seen him play with Mata, and we all know that Mata gets most of the praise for that bot lane, and in general a lot of the success for Samsung White. But I actually used to watch Imp way before he even had Mata, and he was already a very good AD carry, and he was very good in certain ways. He clearly had a lot of talent, but it always felt like he'd never be able to get his due as like the best AD carry, because people could always say, yeah, but you have Mata, okay. So did he just like trip over and end up with the best support again? Do you think, like, does PYL have a similar effect on Imp now? Do you actually buy that old storyline that like Mata kept Imp on a leash and he like knew when to rein him in and all that? Is there something like that going on now?
To my understanding, PYL is actually very controlling, not just with Imp, but with his previous AD carries, that he tells them what to play and when to go in, and he's very micromanaging, pretty much in the same effect that Mata was. That said, I don't think that somehow boosts Imp. Like, obviously, it makes it easier for Imp to perform, but I don't think you can make that as an excuse to say that Imp isn't talented or isn't one of the best. Like, I would consider Imp one of the best AD carries in the world. Just watching him, just like the eye test, how he moves around a fight, obviously his mechanics, his champion pool, he's very proficient across multiple champions, unlike people like Crystal, who can only play, one champion, maybe 2. So, I mean, yeah, he effectively got the Chinese Mata, but I still think that Imp has proven himself to be a force globally and domestically.
Now, another game Vici plays is against the people we mentioned before. So we talk about both teams now. Vici play Master 3. Now, who wins this game for Froskurinn? Will it be a thrilling game?
No.
No.
It'll be thrilling for the Samsung players.
To get to beat the shit out of Dade?
Oh my god, the best thing, this is the only unfortunate thing about the English broadcast stream right now, is that they don't have views of like the players.
Player
you can't
counts,
see exactly. You can't see what happens. The smile on Pawn's face when he gets to shake the other Samsung players' hands is so good. Like, you can just tell. It's great.
Right, we're getting down to the dregs now, I've got to admit. So the last few, we'll power through them, okay. Now, the lovely king, who you've already spoken about before, play the mighty Gamti, destroyers of the all-star OMG. This must be a clash for the ages.
No. Gamti in perspective, just to the short of it, what I think you could say the short skinny. Bottom tier team, they recently switched out. They started the split with their sub mid laner named Leo. They got their new guy, formerly known as Angel Beats, now Shaihu, if I say that correctly. He's literally the youngest player to ever play in the LPL. And this is China, so this guy might be like 8 years old. He's obviously not 8. But
could that actually be true? Surely Zitai would be like fucking 15 years old or 16 years old, I think, when he played in LPL.
Zitai turned 17 last split.
Yeah?
Yeah, but 17 is supposed to be the legal age of...
Oh, okay. So he technically, he was always 17, actually.
Yeah, that's...
Ah, okay. Mm-hmm. It's much like 1984. We were always at war with these stages.
This guy's so young that China drew the line on him. Was like, nope, this guy can't play.
Okay.
But now he's in, and he does actually pretty well. They split 1-1 with OMG, but OMG is drunk or, I don't know, not caring.
Let me ask you a question along those lines then. One of the things that I actually notice people do a pretty poor job with in all regions is assessing like the new talent and figuring out which one of them will actually become the great next player. Who will actually be the next Uzi, who will be the next, I won't say Faker because it's like a ridiculous outlier, who will be the next Expeke, these sorts of players. People tend to do a bad job mainly because they just hype every player who's the young player who has the talent, and they say we use these terms like he's a talent, and they never explain, well, does he manifest the talent? Is that in your fucking mind? Are you imagining a lovely future? In terms of this guy and the other young talents, if you had to put your money on, say, 2 players right now in LPL who aren't stars like yet, as in they haven't got the career behind them, they haven't really shown enough games yet, but these are your 2 best bets to be the next future stars of LPL, who would Froskurinn's picks be?
Just
any position,
or
any team. They have to be in LPL at the moment, though.
And they can't be already kind of like having hype around them.
Well, tell me who they are, and if I haven't heard of them, then they qualify.
I think Flandre is the real deal. I think that's a really easy answer.
I only know him because he fucking disgusts me when I watched the LGD game before. Okay, but aside from that, yeah.
I think Flandre is the really real deal, and I think I'm actually a really big fan of Tail, Gamti's AD carry.
Okay, why is that?
For the resources that guy has, because Gamti is by no means a strong roster, especially because they're coming into the LPL when it's probably at the most competitive it's ever been in terms of superstar talent flooding the region and the size of the region. He does his job, and he does his job very, very well. And I think particularly in the Snake game, like everyone wants to look at Crystal and hype up Crystal, and I've kind of like a beef with Crystal. Like Crystal has performed well. Like he's done his job. No one can say he can't do his job. But his champion pool is limited. He has issues positioning, and he has pretty much every single tool at his disposal to be amazing. Like his support is permanently playing Janna, and his jungle is permanently playing Nunu. Like these directly impact your influence as an AD carry in the game. So Crystal's giving all these tools. So yeah, he looks fucking awesome right now. Tail doesn't have anything, and Tail does exactly what Crystal does, but he has a better champion pool on him, and he does it with less resources. So I think if there's any salvageable parts of Gamti, it's definitely their AD carry position.
Oh, we have one team. This one, we won't go so quickly through this one, because actually I forgot one matchup that happens this week as well is Starhorn Royal Club plays Snake. Now, for everyone in the West who only knows the big names, okay, so I'm sure there's people who even know Invictus Gaming, but don't know that some of the teams above them, like Snake, for example. How the fuck did Snake beat EDG? How did that ever happen? What went on there?
EDG was having issues identifying themselves as a team. This was kind of one of the games where EDG was still trying to play 5v5 effectively and almost kind of going back. They didn't give as much attention to Deft as they're now giving. And I think that Snake just team fought better than them, had better compositions. Flandre has been amazing on his Rumble pick, so I'd give a lot of bonus there, but Pawn failed them. Does that mean Snake, much as when you referenced IG, have they essentially like peaked a little bit early now, and as the schedule plays out? Like for example, Starhorn Royal Club are significantly below them in the standings. Is Starhorn Royal Club going to beat Snake now? Starhorn Royal Club is only beneath Snake because they had the worst front-loaded schedule. Again, it's this issue. LPL teams play 44 games. An average LCS, no, not average. The LCS teams will play, I think, 18 games
18
total.
this split, yep.
So just like weight that. That's incredible. That's a ton of games to be playing. This is a massive league. So these early standings, people want to weight them in the same way that they're weighting the LCS standings, even though the LCS standings themselves are also all jacked up. But it's like it's not even near the same. Like there's so much more to do. You can't take these stands and be like, oh, this is how this is going to work out, because it doesn't show the truth. The Starhorn Royal Club versus Snake is actually really interesting. It kind of depends. I do agree that I think Snake has peaked. They've definitely shown that they've grown and they've adapted. Like no one can discredit Snake from that. No one thought that they were going to be as good as they were from LPL, or from LSPL, but they've learned a lot and they've learned it very quickly. But the issue that I have with Snake is you can tell watching them that they're trying their hardest. Every single game is like tooth and nail. Everything needs to come together. They're playing their hearts out. This is going to be like, this is the playoffs for them. And against these top tier teams, because that's where Snake is standing right now, and that's the context of who we're comparing them to, these top tier teams, OMG, not playing the hardest. EDG, I mean, yeah, they got 2-0'd, but they've been kind of experimenting a little bit. They've been doing really bizarre picks. It's never the intention to get 2-0'd, obviously. Like I'm not saying like, oh yeah, teams just throw on purpose, because that's not what's happening. But there's a different level of growth because of the length of the league, that come playoffs, I don't think Snake is going to stand up. I think Snake is going to have a big, rude awakening call. And I think a bunch of Snake fans are going to be really disappointed where Snake ends up.
So who do you have taking this matchup?
I want to give it to Starhorn.
Okay. If Snake beat them, does that cement anything for you? Is it a close matchup in that sense that it doesn't matter either way? Particularly, it's not nothing telling in that sense.
I think if it's a close matchup, that's more concerning for Snake because Starhorn's playing with a sub.
Okay.
I think the only way that this would be, like, Snake has to crush them here. If they don't crush them, that's bad news bears.
Okay. M3 play against Energy Pacemaker.
Why do we keep talking about that?
Just quickly tell me who's going to win that game.
M3.
Energy Pacemaker just trash.
They are inferior, probably the weakest in every single position in LPL.
Okay. Well, speaking of that brings us to the last game of the week. World Elite. Yeah, Wei Zhao, is Messiah playing against Gamti. Now, who the fuck even play? Oh no, wait a second, sorry. My mistake. Essentially, this is going to be Spirit playing 1 versus 11 because he's going to play versus his team, he's going to play versus the opposing team, he's going to play versus his coach, he's going to play versus the opposing coach, and if he can win 1v11, he's a good player. Maybe this could be a good game, right?
I will say, I didn't realize how good Spirit was, but after seeing the hell that he is trapped in LPL, Spirit is fucking good. That guy is a solid player. He's shown a wealth of different styles, and he's not really known as like a hyper carry jungler, but he had to pull out the Rengar in one of these games. He just can't. It's tragic to watch. If you like watching car accidents, this is the game to watch.
Is World Elite bad enough, despite Spirit's efforts, that Gamti, who you just put down in all those senses and totally discredited for being OMG, should World Elite, can they beat Gamti? I
want to believe, but okay. World Elite, they technically have 2 carries. They have STYZ and they have Spirit. And if Spirit is able to get STYZ off the ground and STYZ just doesn't shit the bed, then they should be amazing. And it's funny too, because again, I just kind of harped on Crystal and I kind of put tail. STYZ and Crystal are like the same goddamn player. Like they have limited champion pools. They're very like aggressive in lane. They kind of go off and they do their own farming thing. They get caught out a lot, like wards counter them. So it's just really funny that everyone is still like hyping up Crystal and talking about him, making him big, but no one's talking about STYZ because he's on like the shittier team, that he doesn't have the same resources. He's flanked by Oluka in the top lane, Ninja in the mid lane, and then Yushe on support. And Yushe's actually a good support player, so I do not know what's happening there.
So Styz was supposed to be the future of the AD carries, right? He was supposed to be like, since I'll draw the analogy like this. Since he was banned previously and played for a shittier team, he was supposed to be like the forgiven of this split. You know, this is supposed to be his split to kind of show that he's really good and he's stepping into Wei Zhao's shoes and he's gonna. But what's happened?
I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. He was hyped up to be like the heir to Wei Xiao. He had a really good showing in Demacia Cup, actually, when they did the finals against EDG. It was really impressive, and I was like, damn, Woodley might actually be a good team. Spirit looked really good. STYZ pretty much dumpstered NaMei in a couple of the games, just like straight up 1v1 outperformed him. But the issue is that the meta changed. It was Lucian, and STYZ just cannot play Severe. Like, these champion picks are really hurting these guys. And again, going back to Crystal, when he's not allowed, like when the meta no longer allows for him to play Draven, which I don't know how he's able to do that in the first place. I think it might be because of the new Janna, but okay. Crystal's gonna get fucked. STOAZ is getting fucked right now because of the meta, and Crystal's time is coming, I believe.
Now that we've done all the games for this week, I want to pick out a couple of games that these are like the must-watch games, but I'm going to do it by certain categories here, Froskurinn, okay?
Okay.
So what we're going to do is, the first category is going to be called the MonteCristo sleep, like, how do you describe it? Like, it'll help you go to sleep, essentially. It'll sleep induction. The MonteCristo sleep induction game. What that means is, this is the game that on paper all the nerds are going to love. Like, all the people who love rotations and they love the meta and they love interesting picks and interesting matchups of players. On paper, if you were a total nerd, this is the real game, you know. This is one that has all the interesting factors to it. Which game would that be? Which game could we send to Monty and he wouldn't just be disgusted that 5 people are just fighting each other in the mid game and like, why isn't someone hitting that tower up there? Like, which game could he actually like find something of value in?
This is really hard because they could either be amazing or they could be exactly what Monty wants. I want to give him the LGD versus Vici gaming game.
Okay.
But only if Vici continues to ramp. Like, Vici, they've been going up like this, and then like they kind of took a nosedive, and now they're slowly going back up. If they're on this route, then yes, that'll be a good game to watch. But if they're taking a nosedive, it's going to be awful.
Okay, now the other game, and this is where usually people who are analysing China fall down, because they're all in the previous category, okay? They're all within the MonteCristo, like, a perfect game is 12 towers and 0 kills, sort of like hell world for fans, okay? So this particular award category is going to be called the Drexxin filthy, casual, disgusting kill watcher game of someone who doesn't care what the towers. He just wants to see someone get 24 kills on a champion. Now, which game would fall into this category, Froskurinn?
I would do either EDG versus Energy Pacemaker, because it's going to be a slaughter, or Starhorn Royal Club versus Invictus Gaming, because you're going to have KaKAO and inSec.
Yeah. It's just going to be people going ham. It's going to be the incoming aggression that our show has built it up to be.
Exactly.
Okay. Right. Do we have any final thoughts? Do you want to wrap anything up?
Watch OMG versus King. That's what I want to say.
Where did that come from? That wasn't even anything to do with those two categories. Why are we going to watch OMG versus King?
I think that if I had to pick, like, it's funny too.
It's because you secretly think King's going to win, and then you're going to be like, that's like your fucking... Monty always has one team, right, that he doesn't quite like bill as like the best team, but he has them in his back pocket so that if his main team fails, he's going to pull them out. Okay, so it used to be KTROs, then it was Jin Air Stealths, now it's Jin Air. Like, this is your team, right? This is your secret backup team for when OMG fails.
I love them. Okay. I've left Invictus Gaming and I've now jumped on King. The reason, and it's funny too, because OMG versus LGD is like, it's Valentine's Day. That's the matchup that everyone should be talking about and should be wanting. Guess what? It didn't come up in any of those discussions.
Yeah.
OMG versus King, I think, is going to be an interesting match, hopefully. And I do want King to win, but more importantly, I think King have the tools, again, to force OMG to do something. Because right now, they're just not doing anything.
Okay, well, on that excellent note, one of the games you'd like people to watch is one in which a team does nothing. Okay, so now that we've built it that well, Froskurinn, if people want to know more about these games, obviously you can watch the games themselves. They'll be on the video channels for YouTube, Riot, etc. But if you want to see someone awkwardly live tweet the games, go to Froskurinn down there. follow other people as well. There'll be like, the problem is it's sort of like watching a soap opera. You have to get to know the characters. Like there'll be a lot of meta contextual jokes within jokes, and sort of like it's a clique that you're not going to really be in, because these are like the nerds, and so you'll be a jock entering this world trying to get in on that sort of thing. But you'll get the flavor of it as we go by in these weeks. So I think we'll just end it there.